Welcome back. You're still watching VOP this morning. Now, there will be no strike today, as earlier speculated, perhaps for good reasons, but let's lay out the issues for you, okay? The organized labor has suspended its plan to embark on the nationwide strike on Tuesday to pressure the government to address the hardships occasioned by the removal of subsidy on petrol. Both the Nigerian Labour Congress, NLC, and the Trade Union Council, TUC, the umbrella bodies of Nigerian workers, have been battling the federal government over the fallout of the subsidy removal, which President Bola Tinubu announced in his inaugural speech on 29 May. Since the removal of subsidy, the petrol pump price, which was at less than 200 naira per litre, has skyrocketed to over 600 naira per litre, also causing an astronomical rise in cost of transportation, food, and other basic needs and services which millions of Nigerians depend on. Since the removal of the subsidy, the petrol pump price, which was at less than 200 naira, also causing an astronomic rise, and the organized labor rescinded the decision to go on with the planned strike in a memorandum of understanding. Its representative signed alongside the federal government late on Monday. Now, the MOU also stipulated that the document, which shall be filed in relevant courts of competent jurisdiction within 1 week as consent judgment by the federal government. The document was signed by NLC representative, its president, Joe Ajero, and the secretary, Emmanuel Uboaja, as well as the TUC representative, and its president, Festus Usifo, and General Secretary Emmanuel Uboaja. Now, officials who signed the agreement on behalf of the federal government are Minister of Labour and Employment, Simon Bako Lalong, Minister of State for Labour and Employment, Nkiruka Onye Jocha, and the Minister of Information and National Orientation, Muhammad Idris. Now, the MOU contained terms and conditions both sides had earlier agreed on. Among them is the granting of wage award of 35,000 naira to all federal government workers beginning from the month of September, pending when a new national minimum wage is expected to have been signed into law. Now, another of the terms is that a minimum wage committee shall be inaugurated within 1 month from the date of this agreement. Now, joining us right here in the studio to discuss this is Charles Ideho, a journalist and public affairs analyst, and also joining us virtually is Chukuma. Good morning, gentlemen. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me right here in your studio.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank
you. What's your take on this issue? What do you think about it?
Okay, about this labor issue, for me, I think I also discussed this issue yesterday with someone when that news broke. Even before that time, I told someone at the weekend when they were apprehensive about labor. I remember my wife telling me, make more money available, let's buy food in the house and all that. They said there's going to be more than 4 strike from Tuesday. I just told my wife, Farabale, as they say, Farabale, no strike will happen. I said, why? I've been a journalist for how many years? Over 20 years, and I've covered the industry before. I've covered banking, So I understand when labor is indeed to be feared. The labor that we used to fear is gone. I hope not forever. And I also say that it's quite discomforting to see that labor will just be huffing and puffing in these days and without any concrete result gotten. Well, labor represents the labor movement, which of course we are within the circle of government. But sometimes I always ask myself, who represents the interests of the organized private sector, particularly the people like us who are working in the private sector and all that. But again, no labor. Does labor actually represent the interests of all Nigerian workers? Well, so it seems by law. But in actual practice, labor represents the government workers. Because in most cases, when these issues go forth and back and then agreements are made and all that, you find that the organized private sector will say the things, so it doesn't affect them. You understand? It's only a couple of of private business that was okay, they're also going to be giving this minimum wage and all that. You see how people, even in journalism, even in media house, people are saying I need 25,000 naira, people are saying I need 30,000 naira, and so on. So, but who represent each of those? So when yesterday I learned that Labour has subpoenaed, I said, oh, I told my wife, I didn't tell you no strike will happen and all that. So it's quite discomforting that we have Labour today that is disorganized, Labour today that is it's no longer feared as it used to be. But again, there are most of the other we discussed that there are factors responsible. Labour shot itself in the foot. First, even the Joe Ajaero you have today that is leading Labour today. Joe Ajaero once upon a time, not too long ago, Joe Ajaero also caused disunity within the Labour movement. So when you fractionalize Labour movement, you weaken its base, you weaken its strength to actually articulate, and also, when they cough, as you say, or sneeze, the government will catch cold. No more sneezing this day, because first when Ayuba Awaba was there, people say Ayuba Awaba was too pliant, was compliant, So he said because the election didn't go his way, the pendulum, he decided to now form. I think it's UCS, Labour, United Labour, something that time that he could. After today, even though Labour has united, there are so many people I understand who are not forgiving him for that action. Though they are working with him, but there's still even this internal wrangling within Labour and all that. They also forget that TUC was also part of Labour before. They also broke away and all that. So how can you begin to have a united front with all these fragments and all that?
This unity. All right, so Chukwuma Okoro joins us virtually. Good morning to you. Now, welcome to the show. What's your reaction to this, really? It was to be the mother of all strikes. It was to be, Labour had said, get food items that will last you 1 week at least, and they had reached out to affiliate organizations, and Nigerians some Nigerians were like, okay, this is it. This will make government bend over. But here we are today. What's your take, Chukwuma?
Good morning, Moses. Good morning, the crew. Moses, when you started to ask that question, you wanted to smile because you probably would have recalled the discussion we had last week about this strike. And I did say, okay, let me say now that I'll be surprised if anybody is surprised that the strike was called off. I knew it wasn't going to happen. Certainly, it was not going to happen. It was this kind of gara-gara that the current NLC, the current Labour, has come to be known for. And its government is actually taking advantage of the loss of strength, the loss of power by the Labour Union to do anything they like and get away with it. The strike wasn't going to hold. But that said, it's irresponsible, so to say, it's irresponsible for the government to wait for the Labour to call out for strike, put people under panic, awaken the consciousness of Nigerians that things are not going to work out in the next few days before they now step in to take action. It is irresponsible if you ask me. Government should do the right thing at the right time. But I guess because people understand that government doesn't do the right thing, that is why there's a Labour Union to compel them to do the right thing. Unfortunately, what they have done, it's a far cry from what is actually required for Nigeria to move on, for the economy to be rejigged and re-engineered for prosperity, for soaring income for every Nigerian. My co-panelist Charles said that the NLC specifically represents government workers, and that is what it is. And he asked about who represents the organized private sector, like you and I. Now, let me push it further. Who represents the unorganized private sector? The spare part dealer at Ladipo, the woman that sells tomato in mile 12, the woman that sells in Koshofe market, who represents that woman, the seller at Onitsha market, who represents that woman. You discover that a large chunk of the population, very large chunk of the population remains unrepresented. Take, for instance, they have added 35,000 naira to the salaries of federal government workers. What happens to you and I?
Right.
What happens to the worker at the state level, at the local government level? So it's a far cry from what is required. The labor is no longer vibrant. Very unfortunate. And I'm afraid from the way we are going, very soon the labor will automatically become an arm of the government. And it doesn't speak good for our democracy.
Yeah.
There's a lot more that we can do. Look at what the conditions, the concessions they made, the government made. Removed 5% tax, 5% value added, okay, 7% value added tax on diesel. Diesel sells at 1,100 naira now. So if you remove the 5% VAT or whatever, the cost of diesel comes back to like 1,035 naira or thereabout. Very infinitesimal, very insignificant. And that was the lie they sold to us about 10 years ago when they deregulated the diesel price. They said with time, more people are going to come into the sector, import, and diesel will come down. Diesel has, 3 weeks ago, it was 700 and something. All of a sudden, it went up to 1,100 naira. The same lie they sold to us last about 10 years ago is what they are still telling us now. And we believe them that the price of fuel will come down when more people start importing. Where would they get the money the dollar to import from? You see, these things are, it's not accidental, it's fundamental, it's foundational. If you don't do the foundational things, if you don't do the fundamental things, you keep running a circus show. I remember when about when Buhari was in government, who said that Nigeria was on autopilot. It has never been more in autopilot than now. Because nothing is happening. The economy keeps moving on its own. No wage, no check, nothing. What we just get is sound bites every day. It's quite unfortunate. It is. I hope we could do better than this.
Quite unfortunate indeed. But Charles, is striking what we need really? Because people get a little bit uneasy when labor seems to, fall in line with the government of the day. But truly speaking, should we be more interested in striking than in having the needs of the people well aligned and delivered?
Okay. Well, it's not what we name, not in Nigeria, because the economy is already hurting, and any action along that line will further hurt the economy. And of course, we can't bear it for now. Everybody's just doing whatever they do. Tinubu is globetrotting, talking to people over there for foreign direct investments here in Nigeria, and all that. Here, power is a problem. Energy is also a problem. So there are so many areas right now that requires attention, that striking would not be something that we have to consider. But again, like Mr. Okoro was talking about doing the needful, all over the world, I mean, it's a well-known norm that government doesn't do what Mr. Okoro called the norm, the needful. The needful is for you to ensure that workers are well taken care of. But do you know that governments don't usually want to hear that money should be, topped up and all that, because it is the nature of government everywhere to ensure that even the workers are not even well paid. I can tell you that.
It's the nature of
it's
government.
The nature, yes. Okay, go to South Africa. Why do you have South African mine workers always going on strike every time? Labor is well organized in South Africa, where we also copied from the UK. UK is also, you hear once in a while say they are going on strike because of you're adding 1p to bread. It's labor. So it is not the nature of government to actually ensure that labor, the workers are well paid. It is not. Go and research on it. I've done research on it. Why is it, whether in Australia, whether in everywhere, why do you have labor movement always protecting? It tells you that there's something fundamentally wrong with the way government either interface or interact with the people, particularly the workers. These are the people you have hired. They are asking for this. You are saying no. Just like Ogoro said, why do you have to food drag? It means that government doesn't want to do that. So it now requires what in this part of the world that the only weapon, the only weapon that they are available to labor is to go on strike. When they call their workers and then they say, okay, you're going to be down in 2. You remember what they said? Labor Labour and what do you call the other one? TUC. Yes, TUC. Cumulatively they have about 70 affiliate bodies. 70. 40 for Labour, 30 for TUC. Including the Joheso of this world and all that, New Peng of this world, all of them. They were all coming together to say they were going to, as they call it, the mother of all strike. Now, people were very apprehensive. But again, they've not even fired the first bullet before we heard that they are backtrack. So the needful is for people to be well catered, their needs to be catered for. But labor anywhere, whether it's the US, I think it's only the US that you hardly have seen, because I understand about more than 80% of the workforce in the US is in the hands of the private sector. So it's well organized. They pay per hour, and then they also allow states. There's a US minimum wage that you can't go below. But what you get from California may be different from what you get in Wisconsin.
So the unified labor.
Exactly. But there is a minimum. But it now behoves the respective states to now begin to say, okay, this is what we are paying according to the worth of that state. But here in Nigeria, you just make it Abia State have to pay what Lagos is paying. Ekiti State or Jigawa, the far-flung states all over there, they have to pay. It's not possible because the worth, what I mean, the government worth, not the state worth, because most of these where most of them are just laying there in the belly of the soil or on top and all that. So, but if indeed that these states can be creative enough to actually say, okay, some of these states, let's take them off from the exclusive list, which government has been trying to do. When you remove some of these things from the exclusive list, it belongs to the state. The state can now mine, the state can now do so, and then make more money. You don't have to wait for the government. But now everybody, we're all tied to the response tricks of the federal government. That's why the federal government is riding all of us was short.
Unfortunately, so.
Yes.
All right, coming to you. Thank you so much, Charles. Coming to you, Chukwuma. The federal government has, given so many promises. They're going to do this, they're going to do that, are all those promises just to keep the NLC at bay with this strike action, to just make them put a pause on it, for now? Do they really intend to actually, meet all of these promises? Do they actually have those plans? Or is it just to make sure that this strike does not go through as planned?
Joy, what the government is doing with us and NLC, they see Nigerians as a video machine. In the video machine, there's this pause and play. They pause you at will, then they play you at will. That is what they are doing with Nigerians. If government knew they were going to do these things, why did they have to wait for labor to threaten a strike action before they floated the idea of paying 25,000 naira initially, and under pressure, raised it to 35,000 naira? I said it last week that Nigerians, unfortunately, we have become very docile people. I don't know if it is as a result of our democracy or what. We have become very docile people because these things have been going on. When was the last time you saw a union go on strike and come back with a basket full of quivers of demands met from the government? It doesn't ever happen. What they just do is the governments have understudied Nigerians. They know our dispositions, they know our psyche and the way we react. They have a way of putting pressure under the table, either with the leaders of the labor unions, or they use influential Nigerians to come and plead and say, oh, don't worry, why don't you just influence the people to go back? The government is not going to do anything. In any case, when would the implementation of this that 5,000 naira start? Where would the money come from? Some states are unable to pay salaries. Okay, sorry, this is for federal government workers. Do you recall that there was a time in the during the Buhari regime when federal government was unable to pay salaries? And they borrowed these monies from elsewhere. Where would they get this money now to pay the 35,000 naira? There are going to be hiccups here and there along the way. So government is not sincere. It is very clear that government is not sincere.
But we understand
and sometimes
that. But we understand that some states have started paying some sort of a palliative payment for workers, like in Lagos State. Lagos State has added some money to the salary of those that work for the state. So I think states will have to now decide on how they want to do that.
It goes back to what Charles said. You see, one of our major problems is this unitary federalism that we practice. If you reduce these things to the level of if you remove most of these things from the exclusive legislative list, the states will be able to develop along their own separate lines. Right. Like, okay, you have cited an instance of Lagos State that is paying extra to workers to assuage the adverse effects of the fuel subsidy removal. What happens to a state like Abia that is still struggling to clear backlog of salaries owed by the previous administration?
I was even coming to that. I was coming to that.
Yeah, exactly.
I was coming to that.
You get the point. And Abia State is not alone. There are other states.
There's Cross River, there's Zamfara as well. And Taraba.
You understand? It's a very tough call until we begin to develop at the federalist level where the unions, that is the federating unit, are able to take care of themselves, generate revenue, spend it the way you want. You don't have to wait for the federal government. This thing that the finance commission has run to FAC every 26th or 27th, it makes people lazy. And it doesn't help us. Government is one of the things the government should do. Like the Buhari regime, I'll give it to him. Before he left, he was able to develop exclusive legislative list to the concurrent. Now states can build rail lines. If these things were well thought out, you can use one, okay, look at what Lagos State is doing, the blue rail line. And it's only Lagos State that is doing it. Why can't other states do it? Because if you have to walk from like Ikorodu to Island and you don't want to use the waterways, by the time the blue line extends to Ikorodu K2 area and connects to Ikeja or goes side by side with the third mainland bridge and now gets into the island, it makes a lot of things easier for people. You don't have to drive to the island every day. You don't even have to drive from Ikorodu to Ikeja every day. You don't have to. So I still believe that the first subsidy removal that has caused all these problems was not well thought out. The removal was not well thought out. One, the government is insincere by telling us that they cannot find those people that made it difficult for Nigerians to enjoy the fuel subsidy, even when we had no reason to import fuel. But now that we were importing and we understand that some people, very few people were pocketing this money, and government is telling us that this money is going into private pockets and they cannot name those private people, what they have told us is that they cannot fight corruption. That is one. Two, the first subsidy removal has caused a lot of problems. Unfortunately, they have not been able to get around it. The economics of it. From what I heard the other time, I have not been able to confirm it. The federal government is still paying subsidy on fuel. So who is fooling who? So, Joy, back to your question. In summary, the federal government is not sincere, and they understand that Nigerians and labor will always take anything that is dished out to us. I'm not saying that Nigerians should go and start destroying government property or whatever, or become very violent. But why don't we insist that the right things should be done at the right time? Okay. I even have problems with the demands of labor. I have problems with the demands of labor? They are not able to articulate their demands to the extent that the multiplier effect will affect across spectrum a larger percentage of Nigeria. We are 200 million people, for crying out loud. Do we have up to 30 million people working with the federal or state governments? No, we don't. So what happens to the rest of us?
An estimated 1.5, actually.
That's it.
Indeed.
That's it, exactly.
And I'm talking about 30 million.
That's a fraction.
That's a fraction.
Very tiny,
fraction.
tiny fraction.
Now,
Very infinitesimal.
All right.
okay. Now, do you think, Charles? Now, do you think Labour was boxed into a corner because Labour had been calling government to have discussions? Government have only responded on the eve of each call for a strike, and then initially we heard the president was going to make an announcement on October 1, and then the presidency came to say no, there was no such thing. It was just a rumor. And then October 1 came and the president made an announcement. It seems like Nigerians are being tossed around like on a chessboard. And the president made an announcement. Remember, Labour was clamoring for 200,000,
Yeah.
and and we were thinking, if push comes to shove, maybe 100,000. And the president announced 25.
Yes.
And now
25 top up.
25 top up for a certain level, and now Labour has settled for 35.
Top up.
This is like Pepe.
It's yo-yo. They play yo-yo on your list.
Please help me understand this. When they boxed into a corner, could Labour have done better?
No, I told you I studied English language, so words are very, very important to me. Labour wasn't boxed into a corner. Labour boxed itself to a corner over time because I said Labour. I want to ask a question. It's a rhetorical question, but if you have an answer to it, but would you trust this Labour today? Don't answer.
Okay.
It's a rhetorical question.
Okay.
Would you trust?
If I had an answer,
would you trust today's Labour?
The
answer. I mean, you are not likely to trust today's Labour the way it is.
The answer is in the wind.
That's what I'm saying. So you see, we will never get out of this quagmire if we continue to operate the kind of convoluted system of federalism we are practicing, just as Okoro said just now. Look, on the one hand, you say we are a federal state. Federal means you have 3 tiers of government. You have the federal, you have the states, and then you have the local government and all that. Now, why don't you allow a measure, if it could be a modicum of freedom, give it to the state. Well, only some states, okay, so only state you have a measure of freedom, but local government, they are all in the pockets. Whether you go to Edo State, whether you go to Lagos State and all that, they are not, just like Tinubu said, they are not allowed to breathe. But you see, one thing I always say, each time I have opportunity, I'm also going to go to also put these things that people are talking about restructuring. Abacha restructured this country around 1996. Abacha restructured this country. And in his own wisdom, I think he accepted the recommendation of the late Alex Ekweme, who was the vice president under Shagari between 1979 and 1984, before Buhari's government struck that time. Now, how did Buhari restructure Nigeria? No, not Buhari, Abacha. Now, Nigeria, 36 states, was broken into 6. Now, today we are calling it geopolitical zones. Good. They were supposed to be regions, 6 regions, 6 zones. What it meant then was that all these regions were carved out because most of them have cultural affinity. They have things that are similar to each of them, to all of them, group as one. Go to where I come from, the South. The South, all of them, the cultures are nearly similar. The cuisine nearly similar, the language almost similar and all that. And their way of life, whether it's the Joma, whether it's the Edoma, they are almost similar. So they put them under one South, making 6 states. They came to Southwest, 6 states, also grouped under one region. So what it was meant to do was that all these states under one region were supposed to contribute a fraction of what they get to a pool, to take care of the needs of that region. For instance, that was why South came up with an acronym. They called themselves the Brace State Union. Brace State. The Brace State means BRACED. Brace, which is an acronym for the 6 states. B for Bayelsa, R for Rivers, A for Akwa Ibom, C for Cross River, E for Edo, and then D for Delta. The Brace State Union. Now, they were supposed, the very first and only time they had a meeting was in Asaba. So even if the 2% of what the 30% derivation of the benefits of general government, let's cede some of it to a central purse. You can develop railway around. Imagine a railway linking Benin and Asaba to Cross River and all that. Now in the south where they have what they call the Dawn Commission, DAWN, that's Development Agenda for Western Nigeria. They also had that to also Ekiti or all of them will pull resources together in the center. That's why you have this Amoteku within. It's on that basis. You go to the southeast. You had the 5 states also Abia and all that. They were supposed to go but when the military left, the politicians, as clever as they always are ahead of us, turned this into political shopping centers where they are going to be talking about what goes to who. Okay, minister will come from southwest. Let's give them the other. You see all this power issue of a sharing. Oh, if Tinubu is from southwest, you must take the president to south, the northeast, and all that. That's exactly how they have modeled up. They have made useless that very interesting and very progressive putting in place all these units. But today they're no longer economic units; they have become political units. And what is coming out of it is how to share the national cake that nobody is contributing any ingredients to.
All right, Chukwuma, let me come to you quickly. I would like your response in a few minutes, if you can, and I will also like you to respond to this quickly before we move on to the next topic. Now we're talking about palliative to cushion the effect of subsidy removal. That's what we are talking about right now. And on the sidelines, we are hearing that subsidy seems to be back. What is going on really in your analytic, in your analysis? What would you say is playing out? Is subsidy gone, or what is going on really? Chukwuma.
Well, the truth remains that nothing is going on and it's still business as usual. But in actual sense, the government is confused. The government has the federal government has lost a handle on the economy. And that is why they are running from pillar to post. And I did say it here that policies are not well thought out. It's either they don't know what they are doing, or they know the right thing, and they know that if they do the right thing, it will hurt their interests. That is the only thing that is playing out. And I said the other time, why will you give us rice and grains for fuel? How do we convert? Do we have refineries that can convert rice and grains to fuel? Because the issue at core, fuel subsidy. Why will you remove the fuel subsidy without arrangements on ground? Or didn't they know that it was going to cause some kind of rough tumble on the economy that is trying to tear everything apart?
I would like for you to wrap up now, please.
It's very simple.
Yes. Okay, that's it.
The thing is this. The thing is this. Government should go back to the drawing board.
Go back to the drawing board.
Government should go back
that
to the
drawing board. Is filled up.
Right?
Okay. All right.
The drawing board is filled up.
Government should go to the drawing board and come up with policies. Policies that will rejig and re-engineer the economy. It is fundamental. It is not accidental.
All right. Thank you very much.
If it is accidental, you can
quickly.
But I hate that word.
Thank you very much.
I hate that word palliative. I hate it. I hate to hear. Palliative is not far-reaching. Palliative is not. So it's just like somebody is having a problem. You just let's give me drugs so I can sleep. But when you wake up, you see me the problem.
It continues.
So you saw the photo footage you saw. Just people are happy with cartons of noodles and all that. Well, they will eat the noodles, and then what happened next?
They come back for more.
So I don't like hearing that word palliative because of what it means. Palliative is not far-reaching. Palliative doesn't save. It only saves life for a while. After that, you go back again to be asking for more palliative. So instead of giving people, as Chinese say, instead of giving people fish, teach them how to fish. They will fish themselves, and then if we give palliative to people, not to be receiving. But government has just they've just reduced Nigerians to the beggarly level, which is very, very not comfortable at all.
All right then. All right then, up next on VOP this morning, every day for the thief, they say, one day for the owner. Well, you never can tell when that day will come. Well, anyway, one is never guilty until proven so, or, one remains innocent until proven guilty. Well, we'll be delving into the EFCC extradition efforts to bring former Minister of Petroleum, Diezani Alison Madueke, back to the country to answer to charges leveled against her. Now, this conversation is what we'll delve into when we come back from this break. Stay with us.